Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's workshop. I want to thank our panelists for graciously giving up their time to talk to you about their experiences and their insights on covering culture and lifestyle. So this workshop is being recorded, and we're going to be posting them on the School of Journalism website at some point. So I'm going to start by introducing our panelists quickly and then having them talk a little bit about themselves and their careers to date. So we have Jasmin Suknanan from BuzzFeed, Dara Smith from Sharp Entertainment, Felicia Lalomia from the North Forker out on the North Fork of Long Island, and Takanashi from Complex Networks. So, well, we'll go in that order. Jasmin, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. First of all, I really hope you can all hear me. Awesome, perfect. So I'm a junior market writer at BuzzFeed. I graduated from Stony Brook in 2018. I did journalism with a minor in digital arts, and right after I graduated, I had a video internship at Insider on the food team where I produced videos on restaurants and unique dishes around the world. And right after that internship, I freelanced with Insider for a bit longer before getting my fellowship at BuzzFeed. And it's all led me to my current role on the market team where I write product roundups and just curate items that fit a variety of lifestyle needs for our readers.
Great, thank you. Okay, Dara. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry. Hi, everybody. So I also graduated in 2018 with Jasmin. I was broadcast focused. My minor was media arts. And right after graduation, I interned at Newsday on their social media team as like video intern. I did that for the summer. And then in August, I started working at the Dr. Oz show as a PA. And then the next year in April, I got promoted to be an associate producer. So I did that for a year, and then in April, I started working at Sharp Entertainment as an associate producer.
What does Sharp Entertainment do? Tell us a little bit about that.
So Sharp Entertainment's a production company. They produce a lot of like reality documentary style shows. Most of their shows are on like TLC, Discovery. I think they might have a few on MTV, those types of shows. And the show I work on is a TLC show called 90 Day Fiance. I work on the Pillow Talk spinoff. So yeah.
What, just gotta ask, what's the concept there?
Well, it's a huge hit. It's basically a show that documents Americans going through the process of like a K-1 visa, which is when you marry someone abroad, and it's like the whole process of getting it approved, then the person coming over, and you know they have 90 days to get married, and it's drama because it's TV, obviously. And so the spinoff that I'm working on, it's the opposite, where the Americans go abroad and try to live there, and it's entertaining. So yeah.
Cool. Okay, thanks. Felicia.
My post-graduation resume is a lot shorter. I just graduated in December, like 7 months ago. And in January, I started working at North Forker, which is a magazine that's produced once a month, March through December. And then we also have a website where stuff goes up like every single day. We cover food, drink, real estate, and kind of other lifestyle things. Our tagline is like eat, drink, live, breathe. We cover anywhere from the town of Riverhead all the way out to Orient Point, and we'll do a few things on the North Fork. Yeah, and I mean, the company I work for also owns the Suffolk Times and the Riverhead News Review and Shelter Island Reporter. So some of the stuff I write will go in there, and some of the stuff they write will go with us. So yeah.
Cool. Okay, thanks. So you write and you also do videos.
Yeah,
for the site. Lay.
My name is Lay. I'm a graduate of Winter 2018 from Stony Brook. I was on the print track. I currently work at Complex Networks as a style staff writer. Basically, that covers that primarily covers fashion. I write a lot about streetwear specifically, and yeah, I've been at Complex for July marks my 1 year because anniversary there. If you don't know what Complex is basically like a kind of like an online pop culture magazine that's very much targeted to I guess the demographics like teenagers to like early 20s, something like that. And it's owned by like Verizon and Hearst. So yeah,
It's owned by, sorry.
Verizon and Hearst.
Uh-huh. Okay. Cool. So I want to ask you each what a typical day is like on your job. So Jasmin, of course, everything is different now than it was when, 6 months ago. But what's your typical day like now?
Sure. So for me, typically, I begin my day or even my week with pitches that I'll actually either submitted the previous week that have been now approved for me to start working on, or pitches that I thought up over the weekend or just like as the day goes on that I'd like to submit for consideration. And we have a team meeting in the mornings where we go over all strategy updates. Now we have a lot more than we used to, obviously, because the current situation and everything. So we're constantly changing our strategy, constantly analyzing what's working, what people are looking for, what's doing well, and as well as what our top retailers have been for the previous week. So we as writers can consider all that info and figure out how to go about building the posts we work on throughout the week. A lot of our work is super independent. So even though we have meetings throughout the week where there might be content brainstorms where we again use that data to figure out how to create more unique posts and figure out more unique products to include in posts, we do a lot of the work by ourselves, and we submit our posts to our editors. They go through a round of edits, and so that's pretty much my day, like just writing posts, going through edits, finding new products to curate those posts, and looking at data to see how I can, one, iterate off of what's already working, and two, look for a fresh angle.
So are you writing, is it sponsored content or is it strictly editorial? And what's the connection between, I mean, it sounds like it's on that line between church and state that we talk about. So do you write just about advertisers that are on your site, or is it broader than that?
So advertising and sponsored content is actually a completely different department for us. So my team works with affiliate linking and getting brands and businesses onboarded to work with us to sort of open them up to a larger audience. We've been doing a lot of work with small businesses over the years to kind of promote their products and sort of introduce people to a new company that could suit their lifestyle needs. So a lot of what we do with affiliate linking is where we can actually get a commission of whatever product we link to if someone decides to buy it. It doesn't come at any additional cost to the consumers themselves, but it's a way for BuzzFeed to build new relationships with brands that people might have otherwise never have heard of.
Interesting. Yeah, affiliate linking is certainly a new way that news organizations are trying to develop revenue. The New York Times does it through Wirecutter, for example. So, yeah.
Right. And it's extremely important for BuzzFeed because one of their values is actually to not have a subscription paywall. So they want to make sure the content stays free for consumers because, like a lot of times it can be a little annoying when you try to like read an article from a site you really love, but then they're like, oh, did you pay $5 this week to read this content? So BuzzFeed doesn't want to do that. And having our team really helps them avoid doing that.
Mm-hmm. And the money has to come from somewhere.
Exactly.
Dara, tell us about your typical day.
So my typical day at my current job, I mean, I feel like my previous position at Dr. Oz is a little more related to like what I
Okay.
learned in journalism. So do you mind if I talk about that
Yeah.
more? Okay. So my current position, I was an associate producer on the field team, and I spent a lot of time producing because they were down a producer and they needed someone to produce. So I stepped in to do that. So my typical day was basically just working on whatever piece I was producing that week. So based on the segments and the shows that we were doing, the supervisors would send out a list of all the tape pieces that were needed. Some segments had multiple tape pieces, some segments didn't have any. And then I would have to meet with the producer, the studio producer, talk to them, what do you want this tape piece to be? Am I going to be getting elements? Am I getting elements online, or am I getting it from my guests? Just basically getting the rundown of it. And then I would go and I would write the script. I would put in like prop requests, work with our bookers if we needed people for our shoot, scheduling the shoot, getting the graphics and the elements, so working with the graphics team. So it was a lot of just coordinating, like working with different teams for what I needed to create this. And then once the script got approved by the supervising producer, then I'd be able to just put it all into play. After we get the footage, then I would string it out and then give it to our editors, and then the editors would put it together. Sometimes you have to sit in with the editor. Sometimes that can take a really long time. Sometimes you're sitting in there for like the whole day because if it's like a really detailed, or like if the piece is just big. And then it's just on to the next one. So that actually, like, that whole process doesn't happen in one day though. That's more of like over the span of a week. But different things happen within the days. Like one day I might have the shoot, and then the next day I'll like finalize the script, and then the next day I'll make sure all like the graphics are in. So yeah.
Okay, so all the different elements of producing for a video broadcast.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Felicia, how about you?
Literally every single day is different. I don't think I've ever had 2 days that are the same. It depends on where we are in the year, if we are producing a magazine, and where we are in that process. So for the magazine, like right now, I filed my stories for the July magazine 2 weeks ago, and now the August magazine, and now I have a meeting after this to talk about the September magazine. So we work like a couple months ahead of time, and then I have about 3 weeks to we come up for pitches for that magazine. Typically they have some kind of theme, like August magazine was on the water, so all the stories had some element of water in them. And then September is food, so all the stories are going to be about food. But within a normal magazine, there'll be 2 food stories, 2 drink stories, 2 live stories, which are like home, and 2 breathe stories, which are like other stuff. And I'll write about half of them. So I have a few weeks to do that. So if I'm working on those, for the magazine stories, I always like to go out and like physically talk to whoever I'm interviewing in person, and like see what they're doing, whether that's like beekeeping, or like I went out with a spearfisher a couple weeks ago, or going to wherever they are and seeing them do what they do. For web stories, those move much quicker. Those are like, the longest is like a week turnaround. The shortest is like, we need this by tomorrow. So like reaching out to people through email, doing phone interviews, transcribing, driving out to do art or photos for those things. We have a team meeting about once a week. I'm the only like full-time reporter, and then there's my editor, and then like a content person who oversees all the content. We meet like once a week, and then we also do the podcast once a week. So it's kind of like an amalgamation of all that kind of throughout one day mixed together.
And then you're also writing and shooting and producing your own videos on a monthly basis, right? So
sometimes with each magazine, we like to do a video piece to go along with that. So most of the time I shoot, edit, produce, write the script for that and everything. And And then I also do a show called Booze Bites, which I do once a month, which is cooking, creating a dish with some kind of local booze, because there's a ton of wineries and breweries and a few distilleries in the area. So like using one of their alcoholic beverages and cooking it into some kind of dish. And that's a video that comes out once a month.
And you're still going out and reporting, even in person. Yeah.
Yeah, it was in the beginning, it was a little like phone interviews all the time. But now, as long as it's safe.
Things are loosening up.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you. Lay.
So yeah, like everyone else here, I would say like my day-to-day is very varied. It's like there's not really exactly like a set schedule. I mean, every week we have a pitch meeting and we just get pitches through my editor. I only work under one editor, and then I have like a couple other editors above me that may look at longer features or more built-out projects that we do. For example, if it's like a story that's like maybe like, I don't know, it took me like 2 to 3 months to do, it might get like 3 edits, whereas like something that's like a quick reactionary piece to like some news about, I don't know, like let's say like a fashion, like a designer gets a spot at Givenchy, and we just need something quick to respond to that news. Like that would be something we just do really quickly, and just like one edit looks at it, whatever. So yeah, I mean, I guess my job consists of a lot of like, it's like pitching interviews and features like that. And like, it's like stuff that, it's like you want to have a turnaround of like maybe like a week or so. So like, something happens, you just notice it, and then you do an interview just off that. Or it's group projects where it's like we might have like a larger feature in mind that I have 3 people that work in my team, which is like just specifically focused only on style and fashion. And we basically, a lot of like our monthly features that are larger, like we just published this like best brands of the year list or something. That's like a group effort that we all come together and we write like blurbs and stuff like that. I also do like kind of like something similar to like a shopping list kind of every like 2 weeks that I trade off with my other coworker, where it's just like we round up like products and just say like, oh, this is cool, you should buy it or something. So, yeah.
So it's a mix of assignments, and you also get to pitch some of your own story ideas?
Yeah, I usually get assigned a lot of stuff, but yeah, I do get to pitch my own story ideas.
Yeah, I mean, judging from the stuff that you posted on the Google Doc that I shared with everybody, you're doing things that come out of your own vision for what you want to write about, it looks like.
Yeah, for sure.
Good. So I want to talk a little bit about both when you were in school and now, about successfully pitching culture stories. I mean, it's probably easier now because you're in places that specifically are looking for stories about culture and lifestyle. Maybe a little bit harder when you're in School of Journalism and there was a lot of pressure to be sort of more traditional hard news kind of thing. So for the participants and viewers later of the recording, I'm interested in how I know some of you I know well, and know that you were always interested in, this is what you want to do. You want to write fashion, you want to write about food. So what strategies did you use to successfully pitch stories in school to get past that kind of bias for the hard news kind of thing? Whoever wants to go first.
I can go first.
Okay. Thanks, Jasmin.
So yeah, sure.
And also, let me just add to that, maybe talk about a couple of things that you were really proud of that you did in school along these lines. Maybe your senior project, maybe something else.
Yeah, definitely. So like you said, for me, I've always just been really interested in the lifestyle sphere, whether that's talking about food, beauty, small businesses, things of the nature. And my senior project was actually more of a business story on the subscription box industry. So like, nothing like politics, healthcare, nothing like that. And honestly, for me, it really starts with just making sure your professors are aware of your interests and your passions, and letting them know why you are the person to do the story the best. Like, what is it about you and what you bring to the table that would allow you to report the story the best, and really dig in and get that knowledge that someone who maybe doesn't know about the topic as well can't have. And along those that note, I would also say, like, don't take no as an answer just because it's the first answer you receive. You know, I actually remember one summer for that journalism internship credit course, I really wanted to do this internship at a magazine called Stylecaster. And I remember going to Professor Sullivan and asking her if it would be okay for me to receive credit. And initially, she wasn't very on board with it. But it all worked out because I, you know, explained exactly what I would be doing during this internship. I spoke with the editor who would be managing me, and she explained, well, yeah, you're going to be doing a lot of research, you're going to be interviewing people, you're going to be curating the content yourself and everything. And Professor Sullivan was totally okay with me going for it. And of course, we had to keep those weekly journals to track our progress. And we kind of like built up more of an understanding that was sort of like, wow, this was actually like a really hefty, like involved internship, not just something that was like fetching coffee and making photocopies. So especially if you are trying to do like an internship that any professor is a little hesitant to allow you to do for credit, you can always try sitting down with the editor who you will be working with and saying, can you give me a rundown of everything I'm going to be doing so I can discuss this further with my school, and just really try to create that understanding and show that, hey, you know, like, I know this isn't totally like what you envisioned me working on, but here's why I think it can work.
Well, persistence, always important for journalists, right? Just another application of persistence, even with recalcitrant internship coordinators and such. Thanks for that, Jasmin. Who wants to go next?
Yeah, I mean, everything she said, I totally agree with. She actually hit on some of the points I just wrote down. I think that knowing the professor is good. So like getting to know the professor and then being able to gauge whether or not they're going to be a hard sell for doing the story. And if they are like really digging your claws into that story and knowing a lot about it while you go to pitch it, because like I remember like certain professors will make you stand up in front of the class to pitch a story, and then they will just constantly throw questions at you. And if, you know, they think that they see holes in the stories, maybe that's because it's a culture story, make sure that you have the answers that are going to fill those holes. Because with a good amount of journalism professors, these stories are harder to pitch. So if you know the topic more and you have the answers to all their questions, it's going to be harder for them to say no.
So research, again, all really important skills as reporters and professionally and in school. Lei, you've always had an interest in writing about fashion and style.
Yeah. So the question is like, how would you pitch like stories to just like people outside journalism school, essentially?
Well, either way, I mean, within school, did you ever, you know, how did you cultivate your professors to get them to let you do the stories you want to do?
Oh, okay.
Area that your professors were familiar with? How did you sell your stories?
I feel like in general, like I'd always like see kind of like the topic or like, you know, what I had, that assignment of what I had to do, right? But I was trying to find like, I guess the way it would speak to me the most, so to speak. Like, for example, I could say that in like Petty's class, I love like graffiti and art. And I had to do a story, I think, about police or something like that. So I suggested a story about like graffiti crime and actually interviewing like real graffiti artists about it or something like along those lines. I don't know, for like Pablo's 320 class, we had to do a story about, I think it was just culture. So that's obviously self-explanatory because you could just do anything about art. But you know, I found there was a gallery opening for like a graffiti show in like Long Island somewhere, and I connected that to a larger thing in New York City as well. I mean, I think like the thing that's hard about culture stories, it has to be like, I think, a very like unique story overall. And I think if you could if you find that it's a very unique angle, it should always like work almost most of the time. I mean, I always like to find like quirky stories when I was in journalism school, like that I kind of related to like the topic that, or like the thing I had to report on. For example, like I had to do a small business story, and I found this very eccentric like thrift store owner in like I forgot where, like Patchogue or something like that. Or yeah, I mean, yeah. Sorry.
So you were able to look within, because you had saved all these ideas of things that you run across, or you knew where to look for stories, ideas, even if it were doing a cop story or a small business story, you're able to find something from your interests that matched with that. So
yeah, that's definitely for sure. I mean, it's crazy because I wish I could like, I feel kind of bad because it wasn't even that long ago. I just can't remember the exact thought processes and everything. Like, but like, I mean, going back to maybe your very first class I had with you and some of the stories I pitched there, it's like they all related to like what the assignment was, but it was something that I felt like was part of my own interest. Like I had an interest in video stories growing up, so I wrote a story about video stories for one of your stories. Or like I think I wrote a story about like art tours. That was something I was also grew up really interested in, so I wanted to do a story about that. And like I just found a way to pitch it to satisfy, I guess, the requirements of what the professor wanted.
And then you had a story about the Guinness World Record holder for crushing soda cans with his shoulder blades.
That was just lucky, though. I just found that. Like,
an awesome story.
Yeah.
I'll never forget it. Dara, how about you?
I feel like I didn't really do a whole lot of lifestyle and stuff in school. I think I kind of just stuck to whatever the professors like wanted us to do. Like I stuck with the news and stuff. But I mean, in general, when it comes to pitching, like they all said, if you're pitching something that's not, that you think might, you know, get rejected or might have some pushback, the main thing is just to make sure that your pitch is loaded. Like make sure your pitch answers all the questions that they're going to ask and passes all the little tests that they might say, well, why would we do a story on this? Or why should I let you do a story on that? Because I mean, it's the same thing that happens like at Dr. Oz. If I was ever going to pitch something, because we would have like weekly pitch meetings, I would make sure that like my pitch met all the criteria, because it's so easy for, if you just have a good idea and you do like a little bit of research and then you bring it and they're like, okay, but what about this? What about that? And if you don't have those answers, then your pitch falls through. So even though it may like seem like a lot of work to put so much effort into a pitch that might just get rejected, you have the best shot of it getting like accepted if you have it like loaded and ready to go and like with no holes in it.
So a lot of reporting has to happen before you submit your pitch.
Yes, lots of research and stuff.
Yes. So I definitely want to open this up to questions from our observers, our students and alumni who are watching. So just either raise your hand or put the question in the chat. And while you guys are thinking up questions you might have, I want to ask you all if the pandemic, the financial situation, and the Black Lives Matter protests that are forcing a reevaluation of a lot of things, including newsrooms, how that's affecting your work environment, your day-to-day, the company that you're working for. Lei, I know that Complex Networks has been in the news a little bit about that, and I don't want to put you on the spot with it because you're a junior employee there, but in general, what are you seeing?
I mean, obviously we're seeing this like reckoning in media today, which is, I think, obviously this created by the Black Lives Matter movement. And I think it's honestly, I can't like, obviously like when I saw that news about my company, it was very like rough to deal with because, you know, it kind of, I mean, I'll just say, I mean, it made me disappointed to hear that because my experience at Complex for the past year, I never knew that people working one row from me or one row behind me had a completely different experience that was horrible essentially. And it was just not the workplace that they were looking for or the image that Complex sets itself to be, which is like a hip hop magazine that supports Black culture and greatly benefits from Black culture greatly. And I'm glad that the reckoning is happening across the board because that's the only way you could actually see change in these like media institutions that are unfortunately only operated by mostly white executives, white men, you know? So I think it's like long overdue to be honest. And I feel like, you know, hopefully there will actually be change internally that happens and it just doesn't become forgotten about, like, you know. And that even goes to say for like just the whole BLM movement in general, because I remember 5 years ago, you know, it's definitely gotten bigger now, but like 5 years ago, I feel like not as many people cared, and then eventually everyone just forgot about it, we didn't see much change happen. Now we're seeing a little more change, but it's like there's still so much that has to be done, so I just hope that the conversation just keeps going, and I think that's the most important thing.
Thanks, Slay. How about you, Dara? How about at your company? Any changes, any discussions happening?
When it comes to Black Lives Matter, no, they really haven't said anything at all. They gave us Juneteenth off, and I think that's just because another Black coworker said something about it. So other than that, my company hasn't said anything. The way it's been affected by like COVID, we've been working remotely, and I started the job right when quarantine happened, so I actually haven't met any of my coworkers yet. So it's been kind of weird because it's like it's different, just that I've been like talking to them and everything just through Zoom. But it was really rough in the beginning in terms of how we were shooting, because we had to have our cast like self shoot, and that was just a whole ordeal because they don't really know how to work technology like we do. So it was very rough in the beginning, but now that we've been doing it for like 3 months, a lot of the kinks are worked out, and so it's a lot smoother now. But yeah, my show is one of the few that's been able to continue going through the pandemic.
That must have been really interesting, trying to get your cast members to shoot themselves and jump into that.
Yeah.
The job.
Yeah. I mean, the producer, because I'm an associate producer, so all of that like tough stuff was the producer's responsibility. So it was kind of nice to not have to like really deal with that hands-on. But I mean, just overall, like just the effects of shooting remotely put so much stress on like all the positions. So.
Jasmin?
Yeah, when it comes to the pandemic, yeah, a lot has changed. We're also working remotely, and like BuzzFeed is seen as like this fun, like cool place where people go to like, kill 10 minutes or kill 20 minutes or kill their whole day, like taking quizzes and reading tweet roundups and looking at celebrity content and stuff like that. And so we kind of had to like, uphold that. And, that means creating even more content that people can use as like their sort of escape from like what's happening, and their escape from like news story after news story about like the number of cases, the number of deaths and everything. And we've actually gotten a lot of like feedback from people who are staying at home, and also frontline workers saying that like our content has sort of like given them like a bright spot in the day, like it's really helped them like manage even more and things like that. But that being said, we also have had to be more wary of the way we phrase our content. So in the beginning, we kind of had to like change our like wording of things, like, oh, like going out to brunch or like going to the movies, like completely stop that, because we don't want to sort of like give people the idea that like it's okay to go out when it's really not. And just sort of like being sensitive to, other people's situations, because some people, yeah, they're working from home, but others may not be working at all, and we have to be sensitive to that and make sure that we're not saying anything that can like, sort of recall like trauma,
Yeah, that's interesting. It must have been gratifying though to hear from people that your work was lightening a dark time.
Yeah, it was really nice to hear. And I guess like that's kind of a testament to the fact that regardless of where you work, you never really know who you're reaching and how many people you're reaching and how your content is impacting other people, so it's always important to, keep up with those standards and like keep on putting out quality content, because you really never know who's going to read this and feel like you just made their whole day.
Nice. Felicia, anything to add on how all the crazy things that have been happening in the last 4 months have affected your work, your workplace?
Well, I've spent more time working from home than I have working in the office, like total. Like I spent 4 months, I think, working at home and only 3 months in the office. But like right in the beginning, like second week of March, when we all started working from home, the next week, half of the news staff was furloughed and 2 other reporters were cut down to full time. And I was actually, as like the most recent hire, was really surprised that I wasn't one of those people that was furloughed. So I'm very grateful for that. But it changed the news side a little bit. And so sometimes I had to, especially in the beginning when things were shutting down, help out on that side a little bit. I would say that people in the area, as far as like our readers, have become very sensitive to privacy, meaning that like, to be relevant with the times, we've written about like best beaches to go to or like best drives to take on the North Fork or something. And people get so ticked off, particularly on Facebook, when you post something like that, because, we're like revealing their neighborhood or their secret spot or something like that. So in that way, we've had to take, be careful on what we're publishing. As far as the Black Lives Matter movement goes, I do think that we've had to take a look at our coverage and see that we may not be covering all of the North Fork, and that there's definitely a lot of work to be done to expand that view a little bit.
Have you had conversations about that in your newsroom?
Yeah, with my team, yes.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to take anything come out of that concrete yet, or?
No, it only happened like a week ago, and I don't know. Hopefully something does come.
Mm-hmm. Let me take a look at the questions in the chat. Priscilla wants to know about advice for people looking for jobs in this type of journalism, and how do you find pitches for lifestyle stories, and how does that differ from looking for hard news stories? So 2 things: job hunting advice. Definitely want to talk about that. That's always a key part of these workshops. So advice on networking, advice on finding opportunities, responding to positions that come up. Let's start with that, and then we'll get to the next question.
I'd love to start. So one of my favorite websites for finding jobs, internships, and even freelance work in lifestyle media is called Ed 2010, like ED 2010. It's a really great website. That's actually where I found my very first editorial internship. They post lots of positions. About a month ago, like, you didn't really find too many because not as many people were hiring a month ago, but if you just keep on like checking back, like now there are definitely a few more jobs that have been posted there. It's a really great website aimed at people who are looking for jobs in lifestyle media, and you'll find a lot of listings from like writer, fashion assistant, social media coordinator, things like that. It's my go-to. I always recommend that website. I would also say, like, think of some writers who you love. Think of people whose work you admire and follow them on Twitter, like their Facebook page, keep up with their work. And honestly, sometimes they actually will post and say, my company is looking for pitches on X, Y, and Z. Email me here if you have any. And that's how you can begin like a freelance gig, I've actually submitted a lot of freelance pitches by doing exactly that, following my favorite writers and responding when they do post, looking for story ideas, and you never know where that can lead. And of course, they'll also do that with full-time jobs as well sometimes. So, really just immersing yourself in the industry and sort of like keeping your eyes open and just being aware of those opportunities really help.
Jasmin, you've also been blogging this whole time, and part of your blogging is about job searching and job hunting. Any particular tips that you've written about lately in your blog?
Yeah, lately, one of my biggest things has been just continuing to foster your side hustle because you never know where it can take you. Like, even if you don't get the job in video production that you really want, you have an iPhone, maybe you have a DSLR of your own, you can go out and you can create content for yourself, even if you're just recording videos of like foods that your mom makes at home, or recording the way like other people do things and posting those videos on a YouTube channel or on an Instagram or on Facebook. You're creating content for yourself and you're building a portfolio of work that you can show. So this is the perfect time to start looking into ways to do that on your own, even if you are in between jobs, are still working full-time, but want another way to kind of like do more work. This is an excellent time to start considering doing that.
I think it's really interesting how people can just people creating their own content and putting it on their own social media feeds is just becoming more and more important. I think you get to do what you want, and you don't know where to lead. So I think that's some really good advice.
Sure. And sorry, not to cut you off or anything, but there are so many possibilities, especially when you think about the fact that there are jobs that exist today that did not exist 15 years ago. Like you can start a podcast, you can start an Instagram account just like showcasing your favorite dishes that you've baked, or like nail art that you've done, or beauty looks that you've created. You can start a blog, you can start a YouTube channel. There are so many options out there.
Good, thank you. Other comments on job hunting? Anything? Dara, you recently changed jobs. So how did your job switch come about?
So this is, I guess, I don't know if this is true for like all like magazine and online stuff, but when it comes to television, the biggest thing is knowing people. And that's what people would tell me before I got into TV. They said, it's all about who you know, it's all about who you know. And it truly is all about who you know. In the past, like since I've graduated, I worked at Dr. Oz. I did like two or three like gigs that were like production, like day-long production gigs, and then this Sharp Entertainment. And every single one was through someone I knew. And then I've also gotten interviews for positions, and that was also through people I knew. So for me, like my success rate has been more with like the people I know versus applying. And that's just how it is in TV, because they know that the work is like, it's very hard and you need to be very reliable. So people are more likely to hire someone that is referred from someone they know versus someone that comes through like an application or recruiting feed or something. So that's how I got my job, my current job. A girl who I used to work with at Dr. Oz, but she quit before, and I was still working there. She told me about the position and how they're looking for people. And then I was like, oh my gosh, really? That's like perfect. And then she gave them my resume, and then that's how I got and then I interviewed, and then that's how I got the job. But like
every job I've ever gotten has been through somebody I knew.
Yeah, it really is. And that's why you have to make a good impression on everyone you work with, because like your like network, it may seem small when you're first starting out, but if you work somewhere and you're become friends, or just cool with, not even friends with, but just you get to know the people you work with and they see your work ethic. Now your your like pool of people has expanded, you know, and then you go to another job and now your pool has expanded even more. And as long as you make a good impression on the people that you work with and they see that you're a hard worker and you let them know what you want to do, that's the main thing, is always letting them know what you want to do, because it's easy for people to try to put you in other places, not because like they don't want you to do what you want to do, but if they see you're good at something, they may say, oh, I really think you should, you know, be in this position. Like when I was a PA, they wanted to promote me to be a booker, a booking AP, which deals with like booking guests. And I did not want to do that. I do not like booking people. So I just had to make it very known to them that I want to go in field. I want to do like the shooting and the editing and the script writing. That's what I want to do. And I just let it be known to everybody who asked. And then they changed their mind and then they put me in the field position. So
how have you nurtured these relationships? I mean, do you like stay in touch through social media? Do you like,
yes,
full time? Did you actually get together physically? You don't do that anymore, but
so the main thing, I guess it's like Instagram. It's super helpful because when I meet people, because I go to a lot of networking events, and so when I meet them, I usually say like, what's your Instagram? Because I just feel like it's easier to keep in touch with people because you just see them more often, like whether they post something or when you post something. If you get someone's like phone number, their email, that kind of just goes in your phone book or goes in your contact list. And then like, unless you're making an effort to email them or text them every so often, which you can do, but I just feel like social media just feels more natural, at least when I'm like connecting with people that are like, you know, within my age bracket. I mean, if it's someone who I think it really isn't on Instagram and it might be easier to connect with them on email, that's what I'll do. But like social media and Facebook is a good way to stay in touch. And also Facebook groups are super helpful with finding jobs. Like, I mean, I don't know if they really have them a lot for like lifestyle blogs and like websites, but I know for TV, and just like media in general, they have a lot of Facebook groups that are dedicated to like people finding jobs.
are there a couple you could mention?
Yeah, so there's this one I'm a part of called Media Mavens. It's an email list, and but they also have a Facebook group, but it's an email list and they send out emails like all day, every day. It's for jobs everywhere. Majority, I'd say, are like New York and LA and like Atlanta, but they have jobs literally everywhere. And it's people will say, you know, hi, I need a production coordinator for this show that we're starting, or like sometimes it's for like short gigs, like I just need someone for a week, I just need someone for a day, or sometimes it's like full-time positions. And it's for women, sorry guys, but it's focused for women in media, but there's also other ones, like I'm in a few that are like for minorities in media, some that are just like people in New York who work in TV and media. So I can like, I guess put that in, I don't know where I could like type that, I guess in the chat thing if you guys want to know.
Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm just going to ask, since Professor Sri, our resident LinkedIn expert, is here, do any of you use LinkedIn to connect with people?
Yeah, I do. Definitely at first it was a lot of like, you know, me using actually LinkedIn for sources for stories in journalism classes. I felt like that was definitely an underappreciated way for students to go about finding sources for stories. But in the beginning, when I was just starting out, like I would, you know, look up people's job titles and like try to find like my favorite like writers on LinkedIn and connect with them and literally just cold message them like, hi, like I admire your work. This piece in particular spoke to me because of X, Y, and Z. I'd really love to like get coffee one day and like pick your brain about, you know, what I can be doing to ensure that I, you know, get a role as like an editorial assistant or an associate editor or whatever position it was that I wanted at the time. And now it's sort of like kind of shifted to where like I get like editors from other companies like reaching out to me on LinkedIn saying things like, oh, we have an opening here if you're interested in interviewing or whatever the case may be.
I'm just going to share one piece of advice from another alum, Will James, who graduated in 2009. He came to a class that Erica and Maya, I guess Maya stepped away, but that we had last spring. And we had a Zoom with him the last day of class, and he said that he applies for jobs all the time. Even if he's not 100% interested in actually getting the job, he uses that as a part of networking. And he develops relationships that might pay off down the line through that job hunting process. So I thought that was really interesting. I hadn't heard anybody say that before. So Lay, how did you get your job at Complex Networks? That's a pretty, high level kind of organization.
I think it's really, I think what everyone said here, I definitely agree with. Like, you really have to, first of all, take whatever opportunities come to you and also build a presence online. I could tell you that I first started writing for Complex because an editor reached out to me because she saw my articles about like the North Face and like the Cut, or like I wrote an article like the Polo Bear for some other site. And she was like, "Oh, your articles are very like unique and interesting because like it's like stuff I haven't seen before. Would you like to contribute to Complex?" So I was like, "Okay, sure." And then she told me to like apply for a position, and I had to go for 3 rounds of interviews. It was really stressful. Like I was like, "Oh my god, this is like a really real job," like because I've never like done that before. And I was just like, wow, this is crazy. And when I got it, I was like honestly shocked too, because I was like, wow, this actually worked out, considering that I never had like a staff writer position before that or anything, But I could definitely say that, or attest to the fact that like, if you want to get into a company like that, you have to put in like you have to put in like 100 hours. You know what I mean? Like you have to like, I was like doing the first ever like magazine I contributed to. I started writing for in like my sophomore year of college, And it was just like a graffiti blog, and it was like really stupid stuff. It was like news posts and things like that, or like about like just like it's like, oh, look at this cool graffiti picture or something like that. It was like nothing too serious. But like from there, it's like I never actually like applied to any job. Just like cold emailed or DM people, and I was like, oh, do you have like a intern position available? And 85% of the people I messaged ever responded to me. But one company called Massive Fuel actually said you could email us here. And when I came in to do an interview for them, they knew that weird blog I wrote for, and they said, "Oh, I know that blog. You must be cool. So you could come in as an intern, And from there, like, the thing is like you can't stop though, because like some people, they get an internship, they become lazy, they don't do anything. And I was like, okay, I'm here now. I'm as good as any of the other writers here to have full-time jobs. Like I gotta really like prove myself here. And I did that. Unfortunately, all my articles got deleted because the company is a messed up company. But like from there, it's like kind of like you kind of build like your brand or your name or whatever, and like people start reaching out to you eventually, But it's hard because it is really hard to kind of break into that whole culture reporting industry, just because there's so many people trying to do the same thing you're trying to do. It's like I could count like there's probably like 10,000 rap writers that I know right now. Like it's hard, but I think what you have to do is you really have to just take every opportunity that gets presented to you and just like run with it. Like.
So we have a couple of questions here about pitching that I'm going to combine. Priscilla, who I think is looking to pivot from more hard news working at Patch to something more culture and lifestyle oriented. So how do you find pitches for lifestyle stories? Like how do you follow those passions that you might have and come up with pitches? And Quarry is asking, how do you stay, when you're constantly pitching, how do you stay creative with coming up with fresh ideas? So who wants to start with that? I guess Felicia, maybe we'll go to you because you didn't get into the last round. So
I think finding pitches for lifestyle stories. I am constantly on social media, just going through my Explore page, just going through like on North Forker's Instagram, I'll go through things that people have tagged us in. So like if there's a company that you really like that is writing about things that you want to write about, I think it's helpful to go look at things that they're tagged in, because sometimes they will pick up those stories because those companies want the journalism company to pick those up. So like looking through things like that. I mean, social media, constantly on social media, looking for different things. And then also just like, I mean, right now it's a little hard to do this, but changing your environment, especially the question on staying creative, like being in the office all the time. I mean, I was only in the office for 3 months and I still felt this, like, you just get really bogged down staring at the same thing all the time. And I found it really helpful to go to a coffee shop or like go out to a park, and even like just overhearing other people's conversations might like spark something that you hear. Or another thing I see all the time is like going into a bagel shop and people have these like posters or signs or like advertising their business or advertising some event or something like that. I look at those all the time. I'll take photos of them on my phone and like stow them away so that when I do, you know, a pitch meeting is coming up, I'll go through my phone and look at the photos I've taken, and I'll screenshot things on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and compile those into a list so that I'm ready for a pitch meeting when one comes up.
Those are some nice, solid, specific tips. Thanks, Felicia. Okay, staying fresh, coming up with story ideas.
I would also say, like, you know, going to content you admire and like reading the Facebook comments or even the comments on the site itself, and just trying to like keep on top of what other people are saying in response to the post, because, you know, you might be able to pick up on something that is a topic that needs more attention, or, you know, you might be able to come up with your own spin on it too. And also I would say, like, trying to find ways to combine your personal passions and the questions that you're asking with the content that you need to write. Like, for example, I love baking. I'm super big on like cooking, baking desserts and things like that. And even though my job is mostly like writing about products and things like that, I do get to do some lifestyle content. And so I, not too long ago, tried out a celebrity recipe, and it wound up being a huge success for BuzzFeed because it ended up bringing in millions of views, but it was also a huge personal success for me because it showed that there is a market for this, and it gave me the opportunity to sort of realize that I could create more content like this. And now BuzzFeed readers are starting to actually see me as an expert on like baking and cooking. So the next time I do post a story similar to that, or a post, I mean, sorry, similar to that, they're gonna be like, oh, hey, like we read her previous post, like she kind of knows what she's talking about.
I think it's really interesting what you were saying about reading comments, because I think we all know that whenever you produce a piece, when you produce a piece of whatever form it's in, whether it's a podcast or a story or whatever it is, either you can't get everything in that you want to talk about, or there are things that you just didn't consider. And people bring those things up in the contents all the time. And if you're interested in pitching to a place, if they've already covered something, and here in the comments is something, you know, related to something they've already used. So it's you know, here's a pitch related to something you've already done, an angle that, you know, a fresh angle on it. Well, let me go back to the chat. Are those, I guess they're just names of different groups. Dara, thanks for that. George was asking before, Professor Jokas, is there something we didn't teach you that would have better prepared you for your current beats? Great question. What should we have taught you that we didn't teach you? Oh, we got everything?
I would say, I don't know how this might be like a little too specific, but something that I heard a lot of professors say that always, like, I just hated when they would say this, is there was this like narrative at journalism school that when you graduated, you would be working as like the grunt at a newspaper or like a local TV station. Now, those were the two options that it was like, you would be covering police reports, or you'd be like running around with a news camera trying to film all these stories. And to be honest, I like totally respect the people that do that. I think that's a really hard job, but I would be miserable doing that. So it just like, I don't want to say upset me, but it just like kind of pissed me off a little bit when I would hear that, because I didn't want that to be my reality when I graduated.
And it hasn't been for any of you on the panel, right? None of you started off doing cop shop or, you know, I guess, I don't know what the TV equivalent is, but yeah, good. Yeah, I mean, you started off in TV, Dara, and I don't know how your first gig at Dr. Oz was, but it wasn't like a typical newsroom where you would be running around covering the breaking news of the day.
No, it wasn't. Like, it wasn't, I mean, I was at the bottom, I was a PA, but I wasn't like, you know, getting coffee or like, you know, doing personal runs. I had an office, and I had a desk to sit at. Like, it was nice, you know? And when I probably like early on in journalism school, like I think maybe when I finished my sophomore year, because I was a transfer, so my sophomore year was like technically my first year in journalism school, I was like really thinking like, okay, wow, so how many years am I going to spend at a local newspaper? You know, like how long is it going to be until I can get out and, you know, get into TV? Because that's what I wanted to do. I really thought that. I don't know why I thought that. Maybe it was the way the professors spoke about what would happen after graduation, or maybe it was just my own like narrow thinking, because I was just still new to the program, so I didn't really get to experience everything. But yeah, like one thing I've definitely learned is that the journalism degree goes really far. Like you can really do so much with it. I mean, I'm working in reality TV right now. Like doesn't really seem like it's has anything to do with journalism, but it's like the things that I learned from journalism and like the steps that I've gone from there that helped me get to where I am. You can just do so much with like digital media, basically like anything in media, and like also anything like research related. There's just so much you can do with a journalism degree. It's really valuable because you learn how to, I think the main thing is like learning how to source people, source stories, and just do like research, because all of that's just important in any career. So I think that's why it's so useful.
So we need to retire that 20th century narrative about starting off in the cop shop. I mean, it still does happen. I've seen it happen.
Barbara, I think we should put what Dara said on a t-shirt, you know, the journalism degree goes way far, so we should do that.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. All right, I think we've touched on all the questions that have been posted, I think. Pitches, job hunting, what could we have done better? Any other questions people have? There's just a few of us here now. Yeah, George.
Yeah, Felicia, I have a question for you and anybody else really. I always ask my students, what is it tougher to work at a weekly or at a daily? And a lot of students say daily, but I've worked on a weekly and I know how tough it is. So working on a monthly is probably extremely difficult to come up with those ideas, and very frustrating when things change and you've already published something and you can't really get to it. And I think that's exacerbated now with what's going on. So do you want to talk a little bit about planning for that? Do you actually bake that into the kind of things that you come up with?
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, I think that the like apex of that was beginning of March when we were planning our May magazine was about to be submitted. And the theme of the May magazine was like, oh, the North Fork opening up. And at that time, all the restaurants and all the bars were closing down. So we had to, in like 3 days, rewrite half of those stories to have like a coronavirus lens on it, which was difficult because it's hard to write about restaurants when they're open. And you don't know what 2 months from now is going to look like. Another thing I would say is we try to be like we always have to think about what's happening in September when we're writing about something now. So like I wrote a story for the June magazine, July magazine, on hops, like the ingredient that is used to make beer. But for photography, like the hops were just starting to come up. So it was really, it's like hard to think about those things when you're writing and pitching 3 months ahead of time, writing 2 months ahead of time, and living in, you know, in the Northeast where things are so seasonal. Like we're in for our December magazine, we're going to be working on that in September, and it's still going to be like hot out. So I think the seasons mostly affected, especially when it comes to like thinking about how is this going to be visually, because that is a huge part of the magazine, obviously, and just like taking all of that into consideration.
Do you tinker more with your website than you do with the mag, or how does that work?
I think there's more thought that goes into the magazine. Stories, every story is at least 1,000 words. It goes through like 4 layers of copy editors. You know, I never take the photos for the magazine. We always hire a photographer to do that. So there's just, and the story itself can be more general. Like literally the hop story was like, go write about hops. So that was the pitch. That was the story. And I could take that wherever I wanted to. And then it was like where it landed, that's where the art would be. And that's kind of how it ended up. But
did you ever have a situation where a restaurant you wrote about in the magazine was healthy when it was, when you wrote about it, but then closed? So do you then go into the site and change your story? How does that work?
I haven't ran into that situation yet. I will say that like everything that gets written about in the magazine that month comes out on the website. So if something does change, we'll probably put like an editor's note in there. I don't think they've had anything like too ridiculous happen, like a health concern or something like that, where like it wasn't, or like some question of legitimacy, luckily. But again, I've only been here for like 7 months, so we'll see.
Great.
I want to go to, did somebody else have a point they wanted to make? Because Duffy just posted a question that we get a lot in these chats. And I think it, you know, it's always worth going back to, which is a lot of entry-level job postings are asking for 2 or more years of professional experience. So, you know, what's been your sense? Did you have the experience that you needed to get started? Or, you know, how real is that 2 years of experience requirement? Do you think that's a real thing, or just something that employers put in to, I don't know, weed out the less determined? Anybody have a sense of that? Did you have any experiences in your own job hunting about whether you had enough experience to apply for a job that, well, many of you have been saying that you actually, you know, got your job through networking rather than applying to a posting that you saw.
I think that a lot of times quality speaks louder than quantity. Like, oh yeah, for sure, there are still listings that will be like, oh, in order to be an editorial assistant here, we want you to have like minimum 2 years work experience. Like, you know, there are definitely still listings like that, but if you feel like you just have like more skills than what they're asking for, honestly, I would just say like, and even if you don't, like, completely ignore the, you know, minimum years requirement and just apply for the job. I think a lot of people get like, I guess, nervous or scared off by that like minimum years of experience requirement, and so they just completely like write it off and they don't even try to apply for the job, you know. And I think personally, I want to say like that's a huge disservice to yourself, and that's a huge disservice to the skills you've spent so much time gaining. You know, like, you know what you can do, and you want to show that like you have maximized your skill set, you know. And even if you don't have like 2 years of work experience or, 3 or 4 years, you can still apply and just, use your cover letter to show that you've learned X, Y, and Z, and this is exactly how your skills can help the company reach their goals.
I think too, something I always encourage is when you're writing a cover letter and when you're tweaking your resume for a specific position, if you're responding to a posting, look at what they're saying in the posting. Make sure that anything that they bring up that you have or that or that you can draw a connection with shows up somewhere in your resume and or cover letter. Like if they say that they want somebody who knows, how to use After Effects and then don't just say Adobe Suite, make sure you say Adobe After Effects, make sure that that language is there. And your cover letter can go a long way toward doing what Jasmin is saying, which is showing what you know and how you know it and how you've used it, even if you don't have the specific 2-year minimum. I think a lot of employers put that in as a kind of way to weed people out. But persistence, like everybody's been saying, persistence is so important. So.
Yeah, I think that we shouldn't let the fact that you might not meet all the requirements in a job posting keep you from applying. I've definitely done that in the past. But you have to understand that, everything that they list, like they might not get all of that, but if they can get from the 5 things they list, if they can get maybe 4 things, or from the 10 things they list, they can get like 7 or 8 things. Like if you're really good in one area, that might make up for you not having, the amount of experience or stuff like that. When I got my first TV job, I definitely felt like imposter syndrome, because everybody there had already, even people who were at my level, had worked at previous shows or interned at, and they were always asking me, oh, so what show did you come from? What show did you come from? Because that's the question everyone asks when you start at a new show. What show did you come from? And I was like, oh, this is my first TV job. And usually that position, like they would take someone who has worked in TV before, who has PA'd before, or has at least interned in TV before, and I never did. But because I got a really good recommendation, like the person who helped me get the job, and then on top of that, my application, like I went really hard with the pitches because they wanted me to give them pitches for for segments. And I guess because that was really well, they kind of, looked over or just accepted the fact that I didn't have any TV experience. So if you can make up for it in another way, like don't let the fact that you don't have one of the requirements keep you from trying.
And a lot of it has to do with framing. I was working with a student yesterday on her resume, and the job posting, the very first word under qualifications was research. And I know you've all journalism students do research, but that didn't show up anywhere specifically in her resume. So that was an opportunity to recast the resume in a way that was more responsive to what that particular outlet was looking for. So yeah, let's talk more about networking, because I think you guys have given some really good, like the links, the places that Dara mentioned are, really receptive to people reaching out. There are so many people out there who want to help younger people come up, people who share their passion or share their background, whatever, or share their school. We have years and years now of alums working all through journalism, both School of Journalism alums and Stony Brook University alums more broadly from before the School of Journalism. So those are people who are already primed to hear from you. Even if you don't know them, you can have Zoom coffee instead of Starbucks coffee, right? And everybody's home now, and people are more receptive, I think, to those pitches, because it takes less time out of your day to have a 15-minute conversation on Zoom than to actually go someplace and meet someone for coffee, which turns into an hour, right? So don't be shy about doing that. Any other thoughts on networking?
One piece of advice that actually Professor Sullivan gave, I heard you say this a few times, that there was one girl that you had like a couple years back who always did such a good job at sending out these emails every couple months to everybody on her like networking list to update them on what job, like what she was up to. And And so like a couple weeks ago, I went through, found all my business cards that I had collected and like a bunch of old professors and just like threw them all in a BCC and gave an update on like what I was doing. And I actually got a response out of a fair amount of people, like past people that I worked with through internships. And I think it's just a good way to keep people connected in what you're doing in a more direct way, as opposed to just like, if they follow you on social media, that's one thing. But seeing, like getting a list of like what you're doing. And then, you know, a lot of them replied to me. So that was like an open door for me to reply back. And if I was looking for a job in a field that I think they could help me out in, that's a way for me to get in. So I think that was something that I will continue doing like every 6 months, is just sending like a job update.
I'll tell Aisha, my former student, I met when she was a high school student in a summer journalism workshop, and she still sends out the less now. She's at the Wall Street Journal now, but she went all through, high school, CUNY Graduate School, Newsday, different places that she worked, the weekly paper in Queens before that. And every once in a while she'd send out those letters. And you guys all just finished, you students and you alums, the recent alums just finished a semester. You have something to talk about what you just did in your semester that you can reach out to people with that now. And I think the key to writing those letters is that you don't necessarily, you don't imply that you expect a reply. So they can you just want to keep your name in front of people, periodically, and your enthusiasm and your accomplishments.
I think another thing to be aware of when you're, like me, I would cold email or cold message or cold DM people. I did that a lot, like when I first graduated and I was really just trying to like get something. But the main thing not to do is to ask for a job. A lot of people make the mistake of when they email or reach out to someone on LinkedIn and they're saying, oh, hi, like, I see you work at this company. I'm a recent graduate. Do you have any positions? Because if you hit people up asking for a job, they're really like, because what are they going to do? Just give you a job because you emailed them? A good thing to do is to ask them for advice. So, if it wasn't COVID, you would probably try to, meet up with them for coffee, but even just a phone call or like a Zoom call, but really just ask them for advice, tell them what you want to do, ask them for advice on how to get there, and then just ask them to tell you about their experience and their career path, because people love to talk about themselves. So they'll talk about that. And then once you finish that, like now you have them as a connection, they know what you want to do and they'll keep you in mind. And it's someone just to keep like in contact with, but never like just straight up ask for a position.
Yeah, and along similar lines, I also wanted to say that like a lot of my coworkers actually say that they get so many cold messages from people they don't know, just like asking them like, hey, like, do you happen to know the hiring manager for your department? If so, can you connect me with them? And they get so annoyed when people message them that. So like Dara said, like if you're gonna message someone, definitely ask them for advice. Like say you would love to like learn more about how they got to where they got, because people love talking about themselves and they love talking about their jobs, but don't reach out to them and then ask them to actually connect them with someone else.
Yeah, I think that's really just, people love talking about themselves. Everybody loves talking about themselves, and people love giving advice, being the advice giver, right? That's a real, that's a good thing. And then it becomes a gift that they can bestow if they want to connect you with someone. So you're kind of letting them take the lead on that piece of it. I think those are really good pieces of advice.
I had something else I wanted to add. I don't know if anyone else wanted to jump in, but earlier, I think it was Jasmin, you were talking about like side hustles and stuff, or just like having like another creative thing that you do. I think that's really, really important, especially since this is a creative field, to always have like a side thing. It doesn't have to be big, you don't have to put a ton of time into it, but to always just have a side project, and you'll like learn the more people you meet. Everyone has a side thing. you know, people have their main job and then they have a little side thing that they do that maybe they do it for extra money, or maybe they do it just as a creative outlet because, you know, they can, it's their own thing and they can create whatever they want and they don't have like the restrictions from their job. And a good way to get connected with people, if you want to reach out to someone, you ask for advice. It's good to also ask them if they need help on any of their projects, because like I said, everyone has a side thing that they're working on. And if you can offer to, I don't know, maybe if they have a blog and you want to like write for them, or if they are doing a web series and you want to help with production or whatever it is, that's a way that they can see your work ethic and see you work. And now they could refer you for something and actually like be confident in referring you because they've seen you work, you've worked with them, you've worked for them, even if it was just for a side project. So.
Now, were those, I have a question about that. Did you, in doing that, would you know about their side project, or is that something that you think would come up in a conversation that you were having with someone that you went to for advice, or both?
Well, also a lot of people have websites. So like something that I did, it was also like when I first graduated, I went on LinkedIn and I just typed in like production coordinator because I knew that those are the people who like hire like PAs. And I found this woman and her LinkedIn had her website. And so I clicked on her website and I was able to see all her work and I was able to see like what she does on the side. So then when I messaged her, I was, you know, I talked about her website and I was like, oh, this short film you're doing, like it looks great. You know, it's just like everyone has, well, not everyone, but like a lot of people have a presence online. So you can, it's not that hard to find people's like websites and their personal work because it's either like linked on their LinkedIn or their Instagram or their Facebook. But it could come up in conversation. But if you do like, not, you don't have to do a lot of research, but if you have a person's name, you could search them on the web and you'll probably find their personal portfolio.
It's a great tip. I'd also want to mention, I think this is a great time to be, if you're between jobs or you're just graduated, to be learning a new skill. You know, there's so much free stuff out there that you can learn. And Phil Altier just posted, I sent out a few days ago, he's on the School of Journalism website. He's made all these video tutorials for doing, you know, all these kinds of video editing and free video software and how best to use it and stuff like that. So, you know, teach yourself to podcast, teach yourself to animate, teach yourself to do something that you don't know how to do. I think employers are really looking for that too, that kind of initiative and that kind of thirst to keep building your skill set. So, Lei, did you have any thoughts you wanted to add on
regarding networking and stuff like that?
Yeah,
Any of it?
anything that you think is helpful to our students and alums?
I would say that you know, you could do a lot of stuff like, you know, you could go on Instagram, you could have all these side hustles, you could follow writers and all that. But I think at the end of the day, you know, if they do take a chance to look at your work, that's what they're gonna notice. You know, like the quality of work will speak for itself, I think, more than anything. And if you want like someone like John Caramonica of the New York Times to follow you back, there's a reason why he followed you. It's not because, you know, you said, oh, this article is dope. 10,000 people said this article was dope. You know, it's like, but if he looked at your, you know, like I always like pin what I think is like my best recent work at the top of my Twitter profile, because I always just hope that, oh, maybe someone checks out my profile, they'll look at that article and follow me. And like, I like to believe that's what happens, you know, sometimes, you know, like, and like, I think that's really, that's what I really want to emphasize, is that if you have a good idea that you know is unique and novel, even if you don't have a place to pitch it, I think you should just go for it. Because a lot of freelance ideas I didn't even have a place to pitch it. I just kind of had a feeling that like, this is a story that no one has done, or this is something that people will be interested in, no one has done, so I'm just going to do it anyway, you know. And I think that.
Did you then post it on your own website?
I just posted on my Twitter, to be honest. Like, wait, say that one more time. Like, sorry, what was the question? Like,
well, if you did a project, you know, you hadn't sold it, but you wanted to do it, and you were doing it, you know, because you were interested, and also because it showed your talent. then what would you do with that project when it was?
Well, when I was in school, I would just go to the school magazine, you know, like that. So that's the thing. I mean, so since I've been out of school so recently, that hasn't really happened yet. It's kind of just like, you know, yeah, like I haven't run into that situation quite yet. I mean, there was one story that I invested a significant amount of time on for the past year. I don't know if anyone's going to take it, but the deal that I made with this person was that it would get published somewhere that we both respect, you know? So like, I'm keeping up that deal personally, you know, because I don't, personally, if it doesn't get published, I'm like just satisfied as it was a great writing exercise in general, you know? So like, I'm fine with that as well. I'm not really a person that likes the idea of just putting something. Well, I mean, I have a newsletter too that I write, which is just like graffiti interviews and stuff. And I don't care about that because, like, to me, that's just okay. It's like whatever. But like, if it's like an article, like, I don't like to like self-publish articles. Like, I would like to get it somewhere, wherever I can, you know. And like, even if it takes, even if it's really difficult, if it's really hard, like, I mean, I'll try my best. I mean, the North Face story, I was about to give that to the Stony Brook Press, but thankfully they ended up taking it, you know. So.
Right. Well, we have time for just another question, one more question, or a couple more thoughts from our panelists before we close out today's panel. Any final thoughts to share? I want to thank everybody for coming and all the great tips. I think this was really, really terrific. And I know people will be watching.